What do teenagers, CEOs, filmmakers, and musicians all have in common? Chances are they're holding something made by Apple, whether it's an iPhone in your pocket, a MacBook on your desk, or AirPods in your ears. Apple isn't just a tech company, it's a global obsession. But this wasn't always the case. Apple wasn't always cool or successful. In fact, it was nearly bankrupt at one point. Here's how Apple Inc. went from a California garage to becoming the world's most valuable brand. (1976), Los Altos, California. Three young men, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne, created a company they called Apple Computer Inc. Their first product, the Apple I, was a DIY kit computer that came without a case, keyboard, or monitor. But it was the Apple II launched in 1977 that truly changed everything. Sleek for its time, colorful, and user-friendly, the Apple II was unlike anything else on the market. It didn't just sell, it sparked a computing revolution as well. By the early 80s, Apple went public and minted more millionaires than any IPO in American history up to that point. In 1984, Apple unveiled the Macintosh with a dramatic Super Bowl commercial directed by Ridley Scott, promising to smash the conformity of IBM's PC dominance. The Mac introduced a graphical interface and a mouse, which was revolutionary at the time. But it was expensive, underpowered, and lacked software support. Sales faltered. Behind the scenes, internal tensions brewed. A power struggle with the then CEO John Sculley ended with Steve Jobs being ousted from the very company he co-founded. In a marathon board meeting on April 10th to the 11th, Sculley demanded that Jobs be relieved of his managerial duties in the Macintosh division, citing poor sales and cost overruns. The board sided with him, effectively exiling Jobs from Apple. Jobs resigned soon after. Without Jobs, Apple wandered. Between 1985 and 1997, it suffered from poor leadership, inconsistent products, and rising competition. During that time, competitors like Microsoft surged ahead. By the mid-1990s, Apple was burning cash and losing relevance. At its lowest point, Apple had just 90 days of cash left. Bankruptcy seemed inevitable. Then a lifeline appeared. Apple made a decision that changed everything. In 1996, Apple acquired NEXT, a small computer company led by Steve Jobs. It wasn't just a business move, it was a homecoming. Jobs returned, first as an advisor, then as interim CEO, and finally as the visionary leader again. He brought focus and simplicity to the company. He cut redundant product lines, streamlined operations, and in a surprising turn of events, he struck a deal with tech rival Microsoft. That's right, Microsoft. He secured a $150 million investment for Microsoft to continue making Office for Mac. With money in the bank and a new sense of direction, Apple slowly began to rebuild. 1998 marked a turning point. The iMac, designed by Johnny Ive and powered by Jobs' vision, was exceptional. It sold in droves and reintroduced Apple as a force in tech. This was the beginning of Apple's new identity as not just a tech company, but also a design company. Then came the iPod in 2001, a sleek digital music player. With 1,000 songs in your pocket, it redefined digital music and laid the foundation for what came next. January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and said, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone," and they did. The iPhone combined a phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator. That same year, Apple dropped computer from its name. It wasn't just about computers anymore. It was about transforming how people interact with technology. It became Apple Inc. If you love short, fascinating stories about your favorite tech giants, make sure you're subscribed to our channel, where we unpack the rise and fall of these giants. After Jobs passed away in 2011, Tim Cook took the helm. Many wondered what would happen to Apple without Jobs. Under Tim Cook, Apple took a different but effective approach of efficiency, global scaling, and product refinement. It entered wearables with the Apple Watch and AirPods. In 2015, Apple introduced the Apple Watch, which combined fashion, fitness tracking, and seamless iPhone integration. The watch tracked heart rate, workouts, and even alerted users when it detected irregular heart rhythms. That feature went on to inspire a series of FDA-cleared health features. On June 30th, 2015, Apple launched Apple Music. It combined on-demand streaming, curated playlists, and live radio shows in over 200 countries. Apple Music laid the groundwork to push Apple's broader services. Services like Apple TV Plus, Apple Fitness Plus, and iCloud helped transform Apple into a recurring revenue powerhouse. In December 2016, AirPods were released. Aside from the stunning audio quality, the AirPods also introduced effortless pairing, built-in Siri access, and a case that auto-charged the buds, features which competitors raced to replicate. And in a bold move, Apple began designing its own processors. Apple's M1 chip, unveiled in November 2020, was a turning point in Apple's history. By designing its own ARM-based processors, Apple unlocked massive performance gains and increased energy efficiency for Macs and iPads, outpacing their Intel-based siblings. All the while, iPhone sales kept climbing. Today, Apple is one of the most valuable companies in the world. In 2025, Apple market capitalization frequently hovers around $3 trillion. It consistently ranks as the world's most valuable brand, all thanks to its pricing power and loyal customer base. Apple's ecosystem is tightly integrated. It's no accident that your iPhone, Apple Watch, AirPods, and MacBook talk to each other so seamlessly. Features like handoff, continuity, and universal clipboard allow users to enjoy Apple's ecosystem stickiness. Once users become invested, it becomes prohibitively costly to switch, and customers find themselves trading up within Apple, purchasing more products instead of jumping ship and switching to another ecosystem. But Apple is also a company under pressure. Despite its massive success, they face scrutiny over App Store policies. Critics argue that Apple's 30% commission on digital goods and restrictions on alternative app stores resemble monopolistic behavior. Apple's ongoing legal battles, most notably with Epic Games, highlight the growing tension between Apple's restrictive policies and increasing pressure from regulators for more open markets. In August 2020, Fortnite maker Epic Games deliberately broke Apple's in-app purchase rules and sued Apple for monopolistic App Store policies. The battle, codenamed Project Liberty, resulted in a 2021 court ruling that forced Apple to allow external payment links, but upheld its right to restrict app distribution to the App Store. Epic CEO Tim Sweeney called it a victory for basic freedoms, yet this clash exposed how fragile Apple's walled garden approach was. Sir Johnny Ive, the design genius behind the iMac, iPod, and iPhone, had been Apple's silent hero for 23 years until his low-key exit in 2019. Sources reveal that after Tim Cook resurrected Apple's design teams and ushered in a more corporate culture, Ive felt creatively stifled. He announced he was leaving to form Loveform, but would still maintain a consulting role. Another major legal battle was in March 1988. Feeling betrayed by a once trusted partner, Apple sued Microsoft and Hewlett-Packard for copying 189 elements of the Macintosh's look and feel in Windows 2.0. Apple argued that Windows icons, menus, and desktop metaphors were lifted straight from the Mac, but the courts ultimately ruled that the idea of a GUI isn't copyrightable, leaving Apple with only minor victories over 10 specific graphic elements. This legal defeat allowed Microsoft's Windows to grow rapidly and cemented IBM-compatible PCs as the industry standard. In late 2006, Apple's reputation was tarnished by revelations that their executives had backdated stock options to guarantee bigger paydays. The SEC charged former General Counsel Nancy Heinen and CEO Fred Anderson with altering grant dates and underreporting expenses by nearly $40 million, forcing Apple to restate its financials. Heinen eventually paid $2.2 million to settle, and Anderson parted with $3.5 million, while Jobs himself dodged criminal charges despite a $7.5 million grant dated back to December 2001. Apple's famous secrecy sometimes backfires. In 2018, an internal memo warned staff that people who leak confidential information do not belong here, only for that very memo to appear in The Verge the next day. In late 2024, Apple was sued for allegedly spying on its employees' personal devices. The company was also accused of trying to stop workers from talking about their pay and working conditions. These claims led to whistleblower complaints. As a result, federal officials began looking into Apple's labor practices. Not every bet Apple has made has paid off. Apple TV Plus struggled initially to gain subscribers in the streaming wars. Also, HomePod never threatened market leaders like Amazon Echo or Google Nest. Most recently, the Vision Pro, Apple's spatial computing headset released on February 2, 2024, has wowed reviewers, but is also under criticism for its $3,499 price tag and basic software. In fact, production has reportedly been cut in half as Apple reviews its expectations, shifting from an initial target of 3 million units to under 1 million. According to recent reports, Apple is planning to follow up Vision Pro with AI-powered smart glasses by the end of 2026, aiming to challenge Meta's Ray-Ban collaboration. These glasses are expected to have a lightweight design, real-time translation, and seamless augmented reality overlays, pushing Apple further into spatial computing. Apple's story is beyond gadgets. It's more about vision, discipline, and comebacks. In the world of business, very few companies get a second chance. Apple reinvented itself, and that is why it continues to shape the world we live in. If you enjoyed this video on Apple's evolution, make sure to like and hit that subscribe button. And let us know in the comments which Apple product interests you the most and why. You should also check out our channel where we explore intelligence on the world's biggest brands. Catch you in the next video, and until then, stay informed.